Hey, welcome back to Make More Music. My name's Chris and I'm a board certified music therapist, and this is the podcast that connects you to music and one another. So welcome back. If you're new here, I interview different professionals from everything from audio engineers to artists to sound healers to people that are running sound at church to, all things in between. Eventually, I want to find all the people that are doing all kinds of creative things and hear about the different paths that can lead you to having the life you want with making the music you want. And I think that a more musical world is a better world, especially right now when everything is bleak. Let's support our brothers and sisters. Let's make music. Let's share love. Let's give more grace. So today I have a great story for you from Nick Loux of JHS Pedals. If you know anything about JHS Pedals, you probably know that they have a ballin' YouTube channel where they are basically sharing what I would call like the Discovery Channel for musicians. Or it's like Mr. Rogers. I love seeing Josh and Nick behind the camera just talking about the history of different effects, talking about some of the people that were creating these effects over time, going from 40s, 50s, 60s through current day times. So Nick is kind of the man behind the camera doing all the video editing, shooting everything, creating a lot of the music and the content that kind of started out of getting bored of creating the typical demo video of guitar pedals. So he talks about working at JHS from pretty much the very beginning when he said he saw Josh just like sweating and anxious in a shed, and he helped putting each pedal together by hand to being the production manager to now being the head like content creator person for JHS. So we talk a lot about that, about creating music for yourself, and his YouTube channel that just launched a couple of weeks ago. So go check all of his stuff out. And if you don't know anything about JHS, check their stuff out too. I have one of their pedals on my pedal board right now, and I've played several, and they are awesome. So before we get too far down in the weeds, let's go ahead and start this show. Today I've got Nick Loux of JHS Pedals on Make More Music. Awesome, man. Well, before we go too far down in the rabbit hole, I'm glad to chat with you. I've been playing guitar a long time, and it was, I don't know how many years ago now, but I first started playing at church, and some of my friends, he was a bass player actually, and he had a few of your pedals on his board, and I was like, oh, what are those? And kind of learning more and more, got into watching the JHS show, and fell in love with the brand like a lot of people do, aside from the people that say JHS pedals suck, right? But so I was doing this project. It's almost 2 years ago now, but I was throwing a prom and I was helping out and put together a prom band at our hospital. So the prom band was for kids with oncology, cancer, other life-threatening, life-limiting illnesses. And I was like, I'm going to reach out to some companies I think are cool. And right away, Zach sent us like 10 pedals to borrow or something like that. Very tempting because he said I could buy them, any of them, for like a significant discount, but right. I didn't end up at the time getting any, but that pulp and peel was really sweet. So now I own my own double barrel, and I just love what you all are doing. I love the education that you all are doing. But before we kind of get into all that you're doing and creating, you ready for some rapid fire?
Absolutely.
All right. Pull open what your phone, Apple Music, Spotify, whatever you listen to, and what's the last track you played?
Oof. Okay. I'm opening my app. I'm looking. The last track I played, I was listening to Hobo Johnson. He's this newish to me, and it's wild. It's like, it reminds me of some Beck a little bit, but he's like this super dorky looking white guy who does these kind of like like rap songs, but rap songs. Wow, that is like the whitest thing I could possibly.
He does these rap songs.
These rap songs. Yeah, it's like it would be like it would be considered rap, but it's so wild, and there's some aspects of it that feel like Cake a little bit, and but it has some pop elements to it. And I don't know if you're familiar with like Me Without You, but like he would do these like singing, yelly, like kind of screamy poetry sort of thing, and he kind of does that, but it's really pop sounding, and it's just wild. I don't even know if I should like it. Like, it's one of the I'm still like, I'm afraid to ask my cool friends if they listen.
Like, is it cool, or or were you listening to that like 7 years ago?
Right. I also don't care, but like, so that was the last thing I was listening to. I was just listening to that today. It's really cool stuff. It's really bizarre.
Hobo Johnson just made me think it was like Robert Johnson's like even more like destitute cousin or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's good. Second, you can take this as simply or as philosophically as you want to take it, but if you were an instrument, what would you be?
Oh man. Okay. If I was an instrument, what would I be? See, this is the thing with these kind of questions, is like I really do take them like, I take them far too deep. Like it's that's like one of the things where it's like, if I'm going to answer this, it's going to be my answer forever.
It's like on your tombstone. Yeah.
Like, and he said he was a tuba, and I'm like, oh crap, I gotta live with that forever. Oh man, if I was an instrument, what would I be? I mean, this sounds like this sounds kind of pretentious, but I feel like I would be like a Juno synth.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, I think so.
What are some reasons you'd pull that out?
Well, it's not because I'm like a ripping keyboardist, because I'm super not. But I like that synthesis. I don't know. I feel like I would get bored being one instrument, and I feel like if you're a synthesizer, you can kind of be a bunch.
Yeah, I like that. Somebody earlier today was telling me that they were a piano because they're versatile, and I was like, oh, so I even like that. The Juno takes it even like a step further. It's like kind of quirky, a bunch of instruments in one. I love it.
Yeah, see, it's okay if you say I'm quirky, but if I say I'm quirky, then we got to end this interview.
Yeah, it's done. You say, I'm a quirky synthesizer. That's it. You know? So, cool. What is something that's been inspiring you recently? Can be anything. Doesn't have to be music related.
Oh, man. Something that's been inspiring me lately. I've been listening to a lot of interviews with Kevin Parker from Tame Impala. I am such a huge fan of his work, and I listened to an interview of him with Rick Rubin, and I just ate it up, because it was, Kevin Parker does everything himself. He's a multi-instrumentalist, started doing stuff just like in his house, bedroom, studio, and I just love that. I'm a sucker for guys that are just like making it happen in unconventional space.
Like it just had to get out.
Yeah. Like, and I also like his story, and just like growing up and experimenting. It just feels so inspiring, and it kind of gets me off of my butt in creating.
I feel the same way about John Moreland's music. Like, I'm just like, man, this stuff is so amazing. And he just started like on GarageBand at his house. And it's like,
yeah.
My stuff I farted around with on GarageBand did not sound like John Moreland.
Yeah.
That's good. Can be music related or just personal life or work life, whatever. What's a pro tip or a hack that you practice that you feel like other people should know about?
Pro tip. Whoa, man. Okay.
I've had people tell me how to keep their takeout food warm on the ride home, so it doesn't have to be anything like. It can
be like, oh, okay. You know, oh man, I'm trying to think of something. Pro tip. Uh, okay. Here's a pro tip. This is a dad pro tip because
Great.
because one thing I didn't realize that being a dad was going to be trying to figure out how to play with your kids but still sit down at the same time.
Truth.
So if you can turn your couch or a blanket in the backyard into a pirate ship, you can entertain your kids for hours and not have to get up.
Yeah, you're just manning the pirate ship. Yeah.
Yeah, and also just a couple, like, if you're once you get deep into the imagosphere of playing pirates with your kids, if you get wounded enough times, that just kind of adds to the amount of time where you can kind of lay down.
Yeah, you're really hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I got a cannonball in my arm. And then what you do is then you send your child off into the yard to go find the proper, herbs and salves to heal your wound.
Yeah.
Then you just, and it's not, what's great is it's a win-win. You get to sit and play with your kids in a way that's really meaningful.
Yeah, and they're, exercising their brains, and, you're like going and tell them to become alchemists and stuff.
Right,
so
exactly.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter today we had to go, she has one of those, like, I think it's Costco, maybe Sam's Club, teepees, and it's in her playroom, and for some reason we had to go in there today and sit and hide because there were ghosts coming to get us. So that was the hiding spot from the ghosts, who I think was actually just our lab. But, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, total 180, different move. What is your go-to junk food?
Ooh, go-to junk food. Oh, man. See, yeah, I feel like, I know these are rapid fire, but I feel like they're so important.
They are. They're quick questions. They don't have to be quick answers.
Yeah, they might be the most important thing we talk about this whole episode. It depends, right? So, like, I'm a sucker for, sweet tarts. Love sweet tarts. And I'll eat them until my mouth hurts.
Yes.
It's like when you eat so much sugar, it like wears away at the mouth skin.
The Sour Patch Kids are the worst at that.
Yeah, right, exactly. So for Easter, my wife got these sour. Oh, dude, these are amazing. I figured it out. Okay, they're these sour, chewy nerds. They're shaped like Easter eggs, and they decided to just always have them available year round. And dude, I wreck my organs eat them nonstop. And the thing is I will finish the night out and I'll be like, okay, I'm done. I'll put them away, and I'll wake up in the morning, look at myself in the mirror, and be like, you're not gonna do that again.
Yeah, it's like a nerd's hangover. Yeah,
and it's like I'm sitting there watching Mad Men, and then I'm like, I should just finish them. So yeah, those chewy nerds are the bomb. They're so good.
I'm gonna have to look those up immediately.
Oh yeah.
Nerds already kind of had that quality. Like after you ate too many, they kind of hurt in strange places.
Yeah. Well, what's great with these is it's nerds are great, but it's also just whenever you eat them, it's the majority of the time it's going to be those mini boxes. Yes. And those are, that's just that's a shot. You're just taking a shot of candy.
Yeah.
But they're it's just more substantial.
Which is what you want when you have nerds, for sure. Yeah. Another 180. What is any person, project, or an organization that you want to lift up with a shout out that you think deserves some recognition?
Any organization okay. Let me think. Oh, yeah. My brother is an amazing artist. He,
That's a good place to start, brother.
yeah, my brother. He's an amazing artist, and he has this Instagram page called Fundraiser for a Funeral, which I think is just like the coolest name ever. And he does this really cool artwork, and it's super unique and really awesome. And I'm actually talking to him about doing a little collab thing.
Sweet.
But yeah, he's awesome.
All together, Fundraiser for a Funeral.
Yeah, Fundraiser for a Funeral, and you can follow his art escapades, and he's super good.
That's awesome. Well, take me back then. Where did you all grow up, and what was some of your first musical memories?
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in Pennsylvania, so East Coast. I lived in Tioga County, which is basically like no one knows about it except there is a college in the town that I lived in. And my first music memories were probably with my dad. I got a lot of my music from my dad. And probably would be like listening to Bruce Springsteen on like a summer day while we're like cleaning the basement or something. And my dad's a guitar player, so I got the bug from him, and I think I started really like actually playing music when I was 12 maybe. My dad got me a little baby Taylor guitar.
Sweet.
Started teaching me chords. And then drums became my thing, my main thing. I remember being super interested. Oh, you know what it was? It was the School of Rock came out.
Oh, great.
And yeah, I was actually thinking about this the other day. I was like, man, that movie, like, I feel like that movie like birthed so many young musicians.
I wonder what year that was. I'm going to see what year, how old I was. Keep going.
Yeah, so I remember seeing that, and I remember like being into drums, and I was just like
2003, I was 13.
Yeah, wait, how old are you?
I'm about to turn 30 this year.
Okay. I'm like a couple years younger than you. Yeah, and I remember seeing that and like watching the kid who played the drums, and he had like
Zach, I think was his name,
or something like that, and he had spiky hair, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I remember like buying like this red colored like gel from Walmart and like spiked my hair, like not like individual spikes, like a porcupine or like. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And I remember doing my hair like that. And the funny thing is my grandfather was the principal of the school that I went to, and we had like kind of strict dress code. But I remember spiking my hair up like that one time, and he was like, "You're drawing too much attention to yourself, son." And I was like, it was the first time where I had like a rebellious thought against. Remember, I was like, "Oh, come on, grandma or grandpa."
Yeah, Jack Black got me to do this.
Yeah, right. And then I remember hanging out after school, and this guy, his name was Billy, and he was giving drum lessons to one of the elementary school students. I was probably like 11 or 12, and I was like, I think I want to learn how to play the drums, like for real. And so I like asked my mom and dad if I could take drum lessons from him, and he started giving me drum lessons, and then I just got hooked. My parents helped me save up for a drum set. I still have it. I like part of me doesn't ever want to sell it, but yeah, I remember buying my first drum set, and I would play with my dad on Sunday mornings at church, and that's kind of like where I got a lot of my practice, and like actually playing with people was playing on Sunday mornings. Yeah.
What kind of stuff were you all playing at that church growing up? Was that contemporary Christian or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, yeah, it was your contemporary Christian, soft rock,
yeah,
but, like Coldplay ripoff stuff, like it was all that. So I feel like I learned, I mean, that's the thing with that music, is it a lot of times it can be so generic, but it has a lot of roots in like rock music that I feel like I learned the chops to be able to go on and like play other things.
And just to be able to, stay in your lane and play with other people and keep rhythm,
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Well, I always love, were you involved in any other bands, either like in school, or did you have any like rock bands, things like that growing up?
I had like a lot of conceptual rock bands in my mind.
Okay, that is even better. What
Yeah.
are some of the names of some of these conceptual rock bands?
Yikes! Oh, dude. Well, so I was really into POD.
I
As a
love where this is going.
yeah. Um, and I still have like it's not something I turn on. Like it's not like my go-to at all. But I have like such a like nostalgic soft spot in my heart.
You're not turning it off if it comes on. Yeah.
All right, if it comes on, I'm gonna sing every single word. Uh, uh, yeah. One of them was called Tri-Fusion.
Love it. Great.
And I basically, the symbol of like, cause POD had that like Trinity like symbol thing, and I was like, that is so cool, and I'm gonna make a symbol for my band, and it was basically exactly the same. But like I remember like drawing like the band on stage and stuff, because my mom was an art teacher, so like I drew a bunch too. So I remember like drawing like the name and like what we would look like, and but I never really had like a band ever really, except for like a second when like after I was married.
Okay.
But yeah, when I was a kid, a lot of it was just playing with my dad, and just or like just playing music in my room.
So between the path of being, having all these sweet conceptual bands and, playing at church and kind of all this stuff with growing up, where did you get to working with JHS? And I know you have some of your own music too. So where was in the middle there? Did you pursue any formal music stuff after high school, or what did that look like for you?
I mean, I just was always kind of playing music at church and stuff, and I never, like, my dad was kind of like my education on guitar
Sweet.
and stuff like that. So, I mean, the great thing is, like, my dad would just give me, like, these little lessons, and then I would run off and play around with whatever I learned for like a couple months. And then when I got bored with what I knew, I would just go back and be like, okay, teach me a different thing. So I would really like, he'd be like, teach me like, the cage system or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be like, okay, cool. And then go mess around with that, and then be like, okay, teach me like a seventh chord or something.
Yeah.
And then I would go mess around with that a ton. And, I didn't really start, like, I started writing, like, I used to do a lot of, like, instrumental stuff. And I remember my dad got Pro Tools and, like, an old interface. I mean, when I say old, I mean now it's old. But
ancient at this point. Yeah.
I actually also still have that.
Neat.
It was like a digi design thing or something. But yeah, I remember he bought this Pro Tools rig, and he meant it like for himself, but I ended up kind of hoarding it. And I just like loved recording, and like would make like little instrumental tracks. Actually, even before then, I remember when my dad got his he got like a MacBook and it had GarageBand. I remember like piecing together loops like pre-made loops and just being like, whoa, like I can make a song.
Yeah.
And then I could record, and I could like record guitar and like piano, like MIDI piano. And I started really getting into that. And it was just all fun. It was just all for fun. I didn't get into actually like writing lyrics and writing songs until a little while later. I remember like what got me into it is I feel like I heard a few artists where like the singer wasn't that good, but like the music was awesome. And I was like, oh, you don't have to be like amazing. Like,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like, and I mean, it was like, you know, some of these artists, I'm trying to like think of, you know, some of them, or be like,
Yeah, people still like this. Yeah, yeah, and like,
well, you know, and it's like, I mean, this is before I knew who Bob Dylan was, but it was that same kind of thing where it's like, wow, as
people love this. Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay.
objective standpoint, like it's not good, but from like a feeling standpoint and like an emotional standpoint, you're like, whoa, it doesn't matter that he's all over the place and his voice is wild. And when I started hearing stuff like that, I was like, oh, like I could maybe take a crack at singing. And I started writing lyrics and stuff.
So, how much are you pursuing, creating music and stuff nowadays? Is that still something more just for fun, or what does that look like for you?
Oh, I'm like in a full sprint towards it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I love it. Like honestly, like the music is like my favorite part of even like my job, more so than everything else. But yeah, I'm working on, I mean, I put a single out years ago, and I've just been learning and trying to figure out how I can put music out, because I am a class A overthinker perfectionist who,
Mm-hmm.
who will work a song into its final days and then be like, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, no, I know how it goes for sure.
I think that it's relatable for a lot of people. So my solution for that is giving myself more work, by starting a YouTube channel where I just put my music out on YouTube and show how I make it. So I'm actually like currently in the process of launching that in a couple weeks. Like I'll
Great.
have my first video, and where I like, actually have a song done. So I'm trying to give myself these kind of impossible boundaries so that it sort of forces me to make decisions and not overthink stuff. Yeah, and a lot of that has actually come from JHS. The first time I really like fully did what I wanting to do was like we did that color box video for, it was a new product that we put
Mm-hmm.
out, where I took that and I used that pedal on every instrument, and I wrote like a full song with vocals and everything, and it was like the most fun I've ever had working on a project. And my thought process was, I just want to do that part of it all the time, because
Yeah.
I wrote this song in like 2 days, and because I was completely hedged in and I had no wiggle room to like overthink it, and I put this thing out for JHS and it was really, really fun, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that for myself and just do that same thing, but force myself to kind of write and create songs in a pressure cooker.
I think that's great. And it's, for me, I found the same thing. The whole like, if you set a fire under your butt, you tell yourself, I'm doing this lofty thing. A couple of years ago, I did something. My team of music therapists back then, we were all creating like, what do you all want to do, accomplish for the rest of the year or something? And I think it was around maybe August or September. So it was, like, how are you going to round out the year? And I was like, there was 20 weeks left in the year or something like that. So maybe it was about halfway or something. And I said, okay, 20 weeks. I'm going to do 20 songs and I'm not going to care how,
Yeah.
they're going to just be 20 songs. Some of them are going to be better than others. And
Totally.
I've still not put that out into the world everywhere, but some of them are awesome.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think that I think that's one of the biggest challenges with musicians and artists is that you can kind of get in your own head about stuff, and especially if you are a DIY kind of person where you're like home studio kind of thing, because you have the power to tweak stuff forever. So there's that aspect of giving yourself these deadlines and limitations to actually like finish something, which the ironic thing is that I'm really good at that for JHS, but I'm really bad at that for myself.
but that's common. That's a lot of people's stories with everything.
Right. Yeah. So I kind of have this example of what it's like. I want to hire the version of me that works for JHS to.
Yeah, for sure. I know exactly the feeling because like that whole like even with when I worked at the hospital, I did a lot more songwriting with teens and a lot more like, I'm helping them through a co-writing process and they're expressing what they're going through in the hospital. And I was like, man, I'll write a ton of songs with kids in 1 week and I won't do anything for a month. But, you get burnout on things too. Like, you got to be careful not to burn the candle at both ends as well. So,
For sure.
But yeah, I had a bluegrass band in college and, we were just we polished these songs before we went in to do an EP. It was the first time I'd done like real studio stuff. And I agree with you totally. I walked in, I played the songs and they recorded it. They mixed it. They mastered it.
Yep.
And it was like, man, that was nothing, like I just played them.
Yeah. No, it's wild because right now trying to, and this like personal YouTube channel is kind of an experiment. And the funny thing is like, a lot of the workflow and a lot of the stuff I'm doing is very reflected in what I do for JHS. The ironic part is that because it's for myself, I met with a whole wave of emotional turmoil and anxiety that I wasn't expecting, which has been actually incredible because it's been teaching me a lot about my own relationship with myself and my own, creative journey, and realizing that like, like I'm working on what it's like to be an artist and do things for myself, because it's easy to kind of jump on somebody else's dream. Like with JHS, there's stuff that like I don't second guess, but then I'll triple guess and quadruple guess it when I'm doing it for myself. So it's great because I feel like I'm in this really like fortunate position where I actually have a grid for what it's like to be highly productive. And so it's like, it's cool. Like I'm living in like these parallel universes.
Yeah.
Looking at this alternate universe version of my workflow with JHS and then for myself. And I'm like, okay, like I'm making it work over here now. And
tearing down the compartmentalizing of of the lives.
Exactly.
Well, I think that is a good segue into what were the skills that you had and, what were you hired on and what was the original you working at JHS? What was that like?
Yeah. So my dad connected with Josh early on, and my dad was in sales. And so my dad did some sales repping in Kansas City for Josh when he was still living in the South. And Josh came up and did like a little workshop thing where he played a bunch of his pedals for people, and they were thinking about moving here. And he needed help. He was really behind on some orders, so my dad and I went down to where he lived and he was just working out of this like shed in his father-in-law's backyard, and the floor was like caving in, and it was wild. It's so crazy to think about it now, but
Was it just him at that point?
oh yeah, it was him, and he was doing everything. And so we spent like a long weekend down there building pedals, and I had never touched a soldering iron in my life.
Wow.
My dad like ruined a couple pedals, but I remember like learning how to do it, and like it was so cool because Josh would play a ton of music while we were building, and I started hearing a lot of music I'd never heard before, and that was a really cool experience. And and so it just became one of these things where it's like I got connected with Josh early on, and I even remember like Alice, his wife, asked me like, "Hey, so like what do you want to do?" And I was like, "Oh, I want to work for JHS." And I was very naive, but like they were in a period of time where it was like, "Oh, like this is so fresh. Can we hire a person?"
Yeah.
I was just assuming like, okay, I can work here. And so they ended up moving to Kansas City, and I interned for Josh for like a month. And we were just working out of his basement for a while. I mean, at that time, like we were only building like a couple hundred pedals a week, even like probably less than that. It was super, super small. And I was hired on to just build pedals. I had done video editing just for fun, like playing with my friends. Like we would film stupid things and like edit them together, and I would make claymations and stuff like that. But other than that, I mean, it was just social media wasn't really like a huge thing then. So when I was hired on, like us having a social media presence was not like anything. Like that was nothing. It didn't even like exist. It wasn't until years later we had like moved into this like storefront on Main Street in South KC, and we were working in like the back of this garage sort of area, and Instagram started becoming a thing. YouTube was around, but like we weren't using that. And we had a guy who worked with us. He's our general manager now, and it's like right at the dawn of like when DSLR cameras started being able to like film video. And we just started like, they would take his camera along, and I would never go on these trips, but they would go on like these little trips to like amp expos and stuff and film like little things with bands. And at that point, like I don't even know who was editing them or whatever. But I remember when I started jumping on video, we went to an amp expo, and Tyler Burkham was there. He's a guitar player, and we filmed a little thing with him, and it was like the first JHS trip I had ever gone on. And we drove down. It was in Nashville, and on our way up, Josh was just like, "Hey, does anyone know how to use iMovie?" And I kind of reluctantly was like, "Yeah, I do." And they loaded up the footage on a laptop, and I just edited it together, and it kind of just sort of snowballed from there. I didn't really film a whole lot for a while. Steve and Josh would go film stuff, but when we released our Moonshine pedal, which is like an overdrive, that was the first video where like I planned it out. I had a shot list. I directed it. I didn't film it, but I edited it, and that was like when it was kind of started becoming a thing. I would edit them in my spare time, and I was still on the assembly line for a long time, eventually I ended up managing the assembly line, and social media just became a thing where it was like we were constantly, like needing videos done, and we started doing like teaser trailers more for different videos, and it just became a thing where I think we started seeing like, hey, this is kind of like the way of like future business. Like having a social media presence as a company is like a big deal. And so it became a thing where I went from managing an assembly line to like full-time making videos. And Josh didn't tell me this until way later, but he was like, I don't know how we are going to be able to afford to have a full-time media person, but I feel like we need to. Like he just told me that like a few weeks ago, which was great. I didn't know that then, but yeah, it was so crazy because it was like so much learning on the job. Like YouTube and I were like inseparable. Like so many tutorials I watched, so many like just endless hours of learning about editing, and like I knew kind of how to edit, but like I upgraded to Final Cut and then to Premiere, and learning how to mix, and like I have been recording in like a basement studio at my house for a while, like writing some music and learning how to mix. Actually, I learned a ton from Graham Cochran. You just did a thing with him.
Yeah, I was talking with him actually earlier today, and I was telling him I just took audio engineering this semester because I'd been really inspired by all the stuff from him and Joe Gilder and other people, and I was like, dude, I started working at this university and I got the opportunity to take classes, for next to nothing, and I was like, I had done all of these. It was funny being in the audio engineering class because I've been playing guitar forever. I've been watching all these content videos from guitar players, so I understand guitar effects.
Right.
And I understand music and music theory, and I know all this disparate engineering information. Right. So I go into the class, and I told him, I was like, man, I'm turning 30 this year, and I'm sitting in the class with a bunch of 18-year-olds, and then there was also like a 65-year-old guy who was taking the class with us, and so I'm like in the middle of these two groups of people, and I was just telling my teacher, who's also my colleague, and I was just like, man, I'm so glad I'm taking this class now, because if I was 18, this would have like zoomed way past over my head, but now it's like, I get the information, I'm literally just like sprinting with it.
Oh yeah,
like,
totally.
Right away, I'd never used Pro Tools, and now I'm like, do I pay for Pro Tools? Do I do Studio One? Now I'm like kind of deciding which of the more pro ones I want to stick with.
Yeah. So. No, Graham is awesome. The funny fact, my wife was actually in his wedding.
Oh, wow.
His bridesmaid. They went to college. He actually engineered, I think, one of her first like music projects. And we've never met. I've never met Graham. Hey, Graham, if you're listening to this, hit me up, man.
That's hilarious. I'm going to have to reach out and tell him a serendipitous afternoon.
That's pretty cool. Sorry, where was I? I forgot.
Where you were talking about learning mixing.
Oh, yeah.
In the basement.
Yeah, I was watching a lot of Graham's videos and learning about mixing and talking to a lot of engineer friends and doing a lot of bad recordings, and I just kind of kept doing it. And honestly, like when I think back to like the crossover between doing stuff in my basement and editing and filming and mixing audio and all that stuff for JHS, I'm like, kind of like, whoa, how did I get away with that?
like learning on the job. Yeah.
How did I get away with that? That's the thing, like, though, is like Josh was very gracious, and we were all, the thing is we were all learning. Like, we were all learning how to do it.
Yeah. He was learning how to run a company, and
right. Well, and even on the content side, like, there was nobody in our niche doing. There was no one really setting the example. Yeah. Like, it was being discovered as I was also learning it. So there was a lot of stuff that was like, okay, like, how do we have an Instagram page as a company? Like, what kind of content do we want to put out? It wasn't until a few years later when I started I had been doing all of our demo videos for like whenever we would launch a new product, doing teaser videos, and I was just kind of like making things. There was not a ton of direction to even like what I was supposed to be making. And a lot of
no one knew. Yeah, it was just like, I don't know, man, do it. Yeah.
yeah, and in a lot of ways, it was just kind of like I loved it, and it was also just it was wild because it was just like, okay, like what do I make today? So I learned a lot, and I made content based on things I wanted to learn. Like I wanted to learn animation and motion graphics, so I would make projects for myself that featured those things, and then I would do them and learn how to do it kind of as I was going. With the show, the show became a thing where it was a kind of a coming together of a lot of really cool things. For me, the show was me being really tired of making demo videos, no one really watching them, and then Josh would post like a video of him, dinking around on a Big Muff, and it would get like 20,000 views on Instagram, and I would be slaving over like motion graphics and making pristine videos, and they would get like half as many views. And I was like, this is dumb. Why don't we just do something together? Like, like I can put my production quality onto your personality and the draw that people have to like wanting to just know what you're doing. And so I started trying to think of like what's something that we can do consistently at JHS on YouTube that would bring value to people. And I remember even Josh and I talking, being like, man, I remember thinking like I want to bring educational content to people. I didn't know what that looked like. So I just remember kind of like exploring and thinking about what like some kind of consistent series that we could do, because we just didn't get good traction on YouTube, because YouTube, we would put out a video every few months because we didn't put out a pedal every single week. So it was like every single time we would put a video up, it would be months apart. So I started seeing photography vlogs in my, rabbit trailing through tutorials. I kind of stumbled on vlogs, and I saw that format, and I was like, oh, we could do this, but like Josh could just talk about nerdy pedal stuff and it would be great. And that kind of, I showed him some like photography vlogs and stuff. I was like, we could do this, but just with pedals. And kind of paralleling that train of thought, Josh had been also doing a lot of talks about pedal history, about guitar history, and so he had been getting this bug for like teaching pedal history. And so we just sort of, it was just kind of like, with our powers combined, like we're gonna create this vlog. And at the time, even like trying to explain, like it was funny because like Josh will tell you like he didn't even really know like that people watched YouTube. Like, I mean, he knew people watched YouTube, but not in the way that like you sit down and you watch like Seinfeld or something.
What it is now. Yeah. And people were already doing that. Yeah.
And so I was like, no, but check it out. It's like a TV show. It's like we could make a TV show. And we started like developing these ideas, acquiring gear and starting to do stuff. And at first he just filmed them all on his own. And just over the years, with anything that we do at JHS, we kind of can't help, like if you talk to Josh ever, like there's nothing that he does that isn't like 110%. So like it's like you sign on to do a vlog and you don't realize that you're basically creating like a TV show with like all of this stuff added to it. So a lot of my musical growth has actually in the last couple of years have really come from the show, like being forced to mix and engineer these things, and it's been awesome. Like that's my favorite part of the whole thing.
I feel like I'm looking back. I looked back to I was like, what was the first episode? Did I follow along from the very beginning? And I don't remember. Did you all do like an announcement that this was happening, or because I remember seeing the first interview, the first episode, this digital versus analog.
Yeah,
it just kind of showed up one day, and then it just kept coming. Is that how it kind of happened?
Yeah, it kind of was, and it was my genius / dumb idea to make it weekly. Like, I did not know what I was getting myself into. Granted, I'm like really, I'm really like glad it is in a lot of ways. But like, if I knew what I knew now, I would have been like, this is bi-weekly at the most, because this is insane to keep up with all this stuff. And at the beginning, it was wild. It was like, I mean, okay, I suggested at one point that it was going to be every day. Like, that's how in the clouds I was at that time. But yeah, it just
something saved you. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
there was divine intervention or something.
Well, what it was is like, I'll say the number one thing this show has taught me is that creating experience for yourself is the best teacher. Like, if you're gonna spend hours and hours on tutorials, you better be doing double the time creating experiences for yourself. Learn actually applying those things. Otherwise, the tutorials and tips and tricks, they don't matter. And like, we learned on the go, like hardcore, and it was just like there was a lot of like logistical learn. Like, okay, so Josh films this thing. How do we organize the files so that I know how to edit it? And then now it's a thing where our typical episode, like I can edit it with my eyes closed because I know the format, and I know the format really, really well. But we just did a lot of learn on the go. And then we gradually, I remember in my spare time just starting to mess around with my UAD interface and miking drums. And I got like, miking drums has always been the thing that's like, it's been my white whale. Like, like I will chase this until I die. And one day I'm going to achieve the most perfect drum recording ever. And I just kind of got like sucked into that, and I got the drums set up, and I found a sound. I found a sound that worked. It sounded like drums. It didn't sound like total garbage. And we released a new pedal, and I was like, Josh, let's jam and like jam on the new pedal. And so we did, and it worked. And I listen back to it now, and it doesn't sound super great. Well, at least like it's
what you want. Yeah.
What I want now. Then I was like, this is dope. But we had this like, and that was the thing, is like there was always this thing where it was just like, get it to this like, like nothing was ever like always pristine. It was like passable, but like we put out passable so many times that it started becoming actually a lot better.
The passable continued to get better and better. Yeah.
And that has just always been this theme that I hold on to, even doing personal projects, where I'm like, hey, like, if you're not willing to just put it out, it's like that meme that's like, if you don't love me at my this, and then it's like a picture of like, somebody in like sweatpants and like a pizza on their face, then you can't have me at my this, and then it's like a girl in like a red ball gown. That's kind of like what your relationship with art is. It's like, hey, if you can't like accept where you're at with pizza on your face, then like you're never gonna get to like ball gowned mode. You know what I mean?
The best one I saw recently was a picture of like, if you don't love me at Joe Exotic in jail, you'll never like get me at like Joe Exotic sitting between the two tigers.
Right. Oh, that's exactly it, man. That's exactly it. Yeah.
So take me through. I'm just kind of laughing. It's funny that I've been going along this journey with you all, and now you've got like a butt ton of subscribers. And I remember there was and that is a scientific measurement.
It is.
But I can't remember. It was a couple episodes before the pedal steel one. I bought a pedal steel a couple of years ago, was starting to learn, and I commented like, I wish you guys would do something about a pedal steel. And it might have been the next week. One of you all commented like, just wait.
Yes.
And I was like, mind was blown.
Can I just tell you that, like, this is, for me, the ultimate redemption of that episode, because I still, to this day, that is one of my favorite episodes that we've ever done. It kind of encapsulated everything that the show, for me, that I would come to love about the show. It all happened in that episode, and it didn't really do that well because it was like even more niche than our niche.
Yeah. Or like, throw pedal steel on there, and then no one will watch.
I'm like, okay, come on, guys. Like, I know it's not like I know it's pedal steel. You're still gonna like it. Just watch it. But like, it makes me so happy that we're talking about that episode, because Josh and I talk about that episode all the time. Like, we've thought about like actually reposting it, because we were like, this was so much fun. Like, how did, like, nobody really like watched it as much as we thought that they would. But yeah, I'm glad that happened for you.
I've been wanting to get the Keeley Dark Side ever since I saw Tim playing on that. And yeah, no, everything's on that. One of these days I'm going to get the Ural's Milkman.
Yeah.
Like, that is amazing. And I'm going to get that Dark Side, because that pedal steel through the Dark Side sounded so good. But, I mean, some of my favorites, I think the Christmas one, the first Christmas one you all did, was so hilarious.
Great.
But when you look back, what are some of the favorite ones you've been able to create and do?
Oh, man. I feel like I keep getting like a new favorite, which is that's a good sign.
That's a great thing. Yeah.
I'm really grateful for that. If I were to pick like a couple favorites, like I mentioned the Color Box episode, that was huge for me. That was huge for me in a lot of ways. That I feel like I learned so much as just a creative person. Like, the journey, like, that was a really intense, because it was a release. We were releasing a new product, and whenever we release a new product, it's always a little stressful. So there's a lot of pressure on that, for me, on that video, and I just was really pleased with how it turned out, and I just feel like I learned so much. And like, I'll kind of always look at that video as kind of this thing that was like a real confidence boost for myself. So that was really, really awesome. And that was something I had always wanted to do. I'd always wanted to take our Color Box and record a full song with that unit on everything. I'm trying to think of some other ones. I really love, we just did one with Madison Cunningham. That was
great. Yeah.
That was such a joy to watch, to actually like be there and play with her. Like, that was so cool. My favorite ones, to honestly, are all very like selfish, because it's like the ones I had the most fun like making. Like, that was so cool to be able to jam with her and Tyler. Like, just being able to play with such a talented artist who, like, where it feels like she's so good that she also makes you sound really good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally.
It felt really effortless. And I was like, wow, like, it just was just a real honor to get to play with her. And oh man, like, I really like the Earn You Ball episode that we did. That was really fun. I got to do a lot of motion graphics for that one. So that was really fun for me, just to be able to exercise some of those skills. And I actually really like doing motion graphics. So that was really fun for me.
Yeah, I think that would be a cool kind of way before we get towards the end, since I've already held you for so long from your family here. But so for someone making gear videos, even not in the gear, even in just music or art, creative, what would be some basic tips that you would give some people to, learn and develop? Where should they be watching to learn these skills? Kind of, I don't know the perfect point to that question, but what would you help somebody who, if you were going to tell yourself before all this started a couple of years ago, what would be some things you would tell people?
Like I said earlier, creating experiences for yourself is the number one educator. You can watch tips and tricks videos all day long, but if you don't apply those by giving yourself experiences to actually see how they apply, and like a lot of times you don't even know what questions to have about whatever art project or music thing you're trying to create until you start. And I think a lot of what I learned was jumping into a project kind of blind and then realizing, oh, I have this list of questions that I need answered. And then I took that list of questions and then I went on YouTube and I figured out how to answer those questions. So I think a lot of times, I would say, don't get caught up with feeling like you have to know everything on the front end. And I'm saying this to myself too, something that I don't think you ever grow out of is just being constantly hungry to learn. And I would say, give yourself deadlines, give yourself boundaries, let yourself make things that you don't like, and instead of getting upset or disappointed in the result, let it be a learning experience. I mean, there's so many things that we learned that I could look back and be like, ugh, yuck. But I learned so much. And I think that's what I'm when I'm talking about these experiences. It's challenge yourself, sit down and be I'm going to write a song in 20 minutes, and see what you learned. Maybe you'll find out that you use the same cliche lyric over and over again, or maybe you'll realize that you use the same chord progressions over and over again, and allow those experiences to inform how you're going to further your education. Because otherwise, just kind of bouncing around on YouTube and trying to figure things out is it can be really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So create an experience for yourself that'll force you to run into problems. Be open to the questions that you have about how to solve those problems, and then go out and solve those problems. Don't worry about the other ones, because there's a bazillion problems that you're going to have. Once you solve those, apply them over and over and over again until you have more questions, and then go solve those.
Simple enough that it must be hard work, huh?
Yeah, it's exhausting, but it's great.
Well, I would love to kind of just get into this last part. I always love to ask people, especially I think just from your all's perspective. I mean, I as a consumer of JHS just love the joy I see you all have, and I also love how you try to be infectious with that, and share it and be funny and not take yourself so seriously and all of this stuff. So I want to hear from you and your perspective, the how and the why that you inspire others to make more music. So what does it look like practically, and why? What is kind of your personal philosophy of why it's important that people are out making music?
So what's the how again?
How practically, what does it look like for you to be inspiring people to make more music?
Yeah, well, I mean, on that, I just hope, it's really a hope. I hope people see what we're doing, and it inspires them to also not take themselves so seriously, and to just enjoy the craft of making music, and to get back to that place of like when you're in your bedroom as a kid and you're just fiddling around with, you know, guitars and amps and pedals, and it's not about whether this thing is, you know, has the right components or the circuit is this whatever. Like there are so many things that people get hung up on with gear and with music that I hope that they see us just kind of throwing ourselves at it, and they do the same, because it's really not worth it unless you're having a good time. And the whole reason why any of this company exists, why JHS exists, is because music is a thing. You know, so if you're keeping yourself up at night, like scared that you're gonna buy the wrong guitar pedal, or you're gonna buy the wrong DAW or something, it's like, hey, like, relax, it's okay. You can return it if you want. And also, this is all about making music. Like, Kurt Cobain didn't care if his pedals were true bypass. Like, you know, I hope people see what we're doing and they go, okay, I'm gonna care a little less about the stuff that's unimportant, and I'm really gonna just pour myself into creating.
And I think that has been inspiring. That's come across from what I've seen of just the whole, like, if it sounds good, it is good.
Yeah,
just try stuff, you know, like, make noise, be nice to people, which seems so hard on the age of the internet, right? Like, be nice to people. But
yeah, exactly, yeah. People like to say stuff from the comforts of their basements.
It appalls me, and I love how you all, you know, some of those first comment videos, and my favorite person on the internet with that is Ryan Burke with 60 Cycle Hum. He just he just reposts the things. I'm like, you do your thing. I'm glad for you.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, totally.
But awesome, man. Well, you already talked about it a little bit from a practical sense, but for the last thing, I would love if you would encourage that person who, you know, I would love for you to even narrow in. Think about the person that needs your all's videos, that needs you all to be encouraging them. That, like you said, the person who needs to maybe not take themselves so seriously, whatever those issues are. I want you to just take a minute. And what would you say to that person, whether that's the younger version of yourself or this other person that, you know, this mythical person watching these videos?
Yeah. You know, I would just say, listen, if you're listening to this podcast, it's because you really love music, and that's the most important thing. And if you love it enough, like, all of the stuff that you're worried about is going to clear up. Just create. That is the only thing that's really important. What kind of guitar you have, your proficiency at the instrument, your love for making music is what's going to drive you to get better. So just focus on that. It doesn't matter if you have the dumpiest guitar rig or the worst drum set. It's just like, get really good at it. Get really good at it, and, you know, the recording equipment and all of that stuff, that'll come because you'll just, it'll overflow. It'll come from that overflow of just loving to create. Just dive into making things and don't worry about what other people think. All those people on the internet who are, you know, all the people that comment on our videos and are mad because of whatever, I feel bad for those people, because they're not doing anything. They're probably sad because they didn't do anything. So
hurt people.
Yeah. So I would just say, just dive into it. Don't worry about what people think. Some of the most influential, inspiring artists of all time started from literally nothing, and they just were so hungry to make music and to make art that all the other stuff kind of came into place. So I think just creating is the most important.
Awesome. Well, Nick, I love this. This has been a great chat.
Yeah.
I love all your time that you've shared. So since we've talked about all these awesome things, if someone doesn't already know about what you do, about JHS, I always say when they're waxing down their surfboard to go on the World Wide Web and surf, where do you want them to look?
Yeah, well, you can follow JHS Pedals at JHS Pedals on Instagram, and you can subscribe to the JHS Show on YouTube, and you can follow me at Nick's Tapes, which will be the name of my YouTube channel. Which by the time this comes out, I should have a couple videos up, and it'll be the same thing on YouTube. So Nick's Tapes on YouTube as well. But yeah, that's where all of the stuff is happening.
Awesome, Nick. Well, I appreciate you. I feel like we'll have to connect again sometime soon in the future.
Sure.
This is a good bouncing off point. Cool. Well, anything else you need to clear your chest, or are you ready to call it a night?
No, you know what? I have a hankering for those gooey nerds.
You need to go get you one, man.
I need to go get some of those before it gets too much later.
Yeah. Maybe have one or 9 of those. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 or 9.
Yeah, cool. All right, man. Well, for Nick and for Chris, remember, everybody, give more grace, share more love, and make more music. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that chat today with Nick Loux of JHS Pedals. If you did, remember in the show notes on your podcast player or down below in the description in the YouTube video, because I am on YouTube, remember, you can find everything for Nick, for JHS Pedals, the JHS Show, which is on YouTube that comes out every week, that is ballin'. So check that out. And if you want to support the show, you can do so. You can follow us on Instagram at make.more.music. You can check us out on YouTube at Make More Music Podcast, and tell a friend, tell a stranger, tell whoever about the show. I'd really appreciate it if you do that. You can give a thumbs up, you can subscribe, and give a rating and review. All of those things are super grateful. We do have merchandise, and all that stuff is in the show notes and everything too. But today we're going to do a special thing. We're going to end with the most recent song that Nick put out for the demo of the 4 awesome new fuzz pedals that JHS just released. He recorded drums, synth, guitar, and vocals all through 4 different fuzz pedals. So here is Elevator Disco by Nick Loux using all JHS pedals. Give more grace, share more love, make more music. Okay.
Shameless poetic, got the last code. Elevator disco. could have just done it, and who would have cared if I failed? It would have just been on me, and it wouldn't have been a big deal. Who really cares? My mom, my dad, my coworkers? It doesn't even really matter that much. I'm doing my best anyway. I'm trying to create and make some good stuff, and that's really great. I think that's great. I think it's awesome.